Look, if you're seriously focused on building your financial future, you've probably heard the old saying that saving your first $20,000 is the hardest part. And honestly, it absolutely is. You might even already know that crossing that specific line changes something inside you. But what almost nobody talks about is the hidden world of what actually happens after you hit that milestone. In this explainer, we're going to unpack the fascinating psychology behind portfolio growth. We'll look at the exact psychological and mathematical shifts that take place once you cross that line, and why the months and years immediately following that first 20K are actually way more powerful than getting there in the first place. So let's dive right into this core mystery. What really happens after $20,000? Most people expect crossing that line to bring this permanent, life-altering sense of relief, like you've finally made it. But that emotional high, it fades surprisingly fast. Let's look at why that fading relief is completely normal, and more importantly, why that exact moment is when the real magic of wealth acceleration is just getting started. So first up, we have the illusion of relief and what it means to actually move past that first 20K. Let's just validate something right off the bat. The grind to your first 20K is intensely real, but the lasting relief? Yeah, that's an illusion, and we can thank human nature for that. It's literally a psychological process called hedonic adaptation. Think of it like stepping into a really hot tub. At first, it's a huge shock to the system, but give it a few minutes and it just becomes your new normal. Your brain simply stops being impressed by your $20,000 balance. But here's the thing, that's actually a great thing, because your psychology shifts entirely. It stops being about escaping zero and starts being all about momentum. As you'll see, this new normal completely rewires how you evaluate risk. I mean, think about it. If you only have $2,000 to your name, a $500 market dip feels like an absolute crisis, right? Every alarm bell in your head goes off. But when you have $60,000 working for you, that exact same $500 drop is barely a blip on the radar. This is what we call your loss cushion. It's absolutely crucial because it prevents you from panic selling. Market dips suddenly look less like immediate threats and way more like normal temporary weather patterns. That brings us to the math of momentum and why the next 50K happens so much faster. This psychological shift we've been talking about isn't just in your head. It is backed up by hard mathematical acceleration. Let's say you invest $1,000 a month at an 8% annual return. Building that first $50,000 is a super heavy lift. It takes roughly 3.5 years. But jumping from $50,000 to $100,000, that takes less than 3 years. Time literally compresses. Why? Because a much bigger chunk of your growth is now coming directly from the market, not just from your paycheck. And here is the core truth of this entire phase. Your physical effort stays exactly the same. You are still just putting in that exact same $1,000 a month. But the compounding principle is now operating at a scale that you can actually feel month to month. Your money has effectively put on a hard hat and is doing the heavy lifting for you. Which leads us to our next major shift in mindset, viewing your portfolio as a teammate. In the beginning, most of us have this piggy bank mentality. Saving feels incredibly restrictive. It feels like something you do to your money while you're just suffering alone in the dark. But once you cross that $20,000 threshold, a profound shift happens. Your portfolio actually becomes a teammate. It's quietly working alongside you while you sleep, while you're at work, or while you're just out living your life. Moving from this idea of saving alone to building together is the absolute secret to staying financially disciplined without completely burning yourself out. Now let's explore how this creates an invisible income engine, completely redefining your relationship with work. As your portfolio hits that $80,000 to $150,000 range, it starts generating what we call invisible income. To put that into perspective, at $100,000 invested with an 8% return, you're looking at $8,000 a year in passive growth. Think about that for a second. That's nearly $700 a month. That's enough to cover your groceries or a car payment without you lifting a single finger. Your portfolio is basically the ultimate ideal roommate. It quietly pays its share of the rent and never leaves dishes in the sink. And because of that invisible income, your career leverage changes entirely. Think back to the beginning. You were flying with one engine, your paycheck. If you lost your job, your wealth creation crashed instantly. No way around it. But now you have two engines. You aren't betting your entire life on a single income source anymore. You can confidently negotiate harder, you can walk away from toxic bosses, or you can take calculated career risks. The psychology of having that second engine running in the background is pure freedom. Okay, but we need to pivot here and talk about the complacency trap and how easy it is to sabotage this momentum. We seriously need to issue a warning here. Because right at your moment of triumph, there is a massive behavioral trap waiting for you. As the quote says, they start treating the feeling of security as if it's the same thing as actual security. This is hands down the single most common way people sabotage themselves. You start seeing the numbers growing, you feel that lost cushion we talked about, and suddenly your confidence quietly rots into complacency. This self-sabotage usually happens in 3 really predictable steps. Step 1, you stop contributing consistently just because you feel like you're ahead. Step 2, you loosen up your spending. You tell yourself, oh, it's just this month, until it becomes a permanent habit. And step 3, actually, scratch that. Step 3 is the deadliest. You get overconfident and start taking uncalculated risks, chasing bigger returns. If you fall into this trap, you genuinely risk plateauing for a decade, completely killing the compound growth you worked so incredibly hard to set up. So how do we avoid that? It comes down to systems over willpower, which is how you keep compounding. To survive the complacency trap, you must fundamentally replace raw, emotional willpower with unbreakable systems. These are your non-negotiables. You've got to automate your contributions so they happen even when you don't feel motivated at all. Use a boring, simple investment strategy and just ignore the market when it gets loud. Stop checking daily prices. The daily noise doesn't matter, only the decade-long trend does. And please, stop comparing your timeline to everyone else's highlight reel on social media. You have to make consistency your absolute law. Remember, everyone's timeline looks entirely different. Starting at 22 versus starting at 35 doesn't make one person a genius and the other a failure. It just means that compounding requires time, which is the one variable you absolutely cannot hack, fake, or rush. You just have to start as soon as you can and stay in the game long after that initial excitement wears off. Your past self had the immense discipline to get you out of the starting gate. But building real, generational wealth isn't about what you did to get here. It's entirely about what you do next. So, what's it going to be? Will you let complacency stall your engines? Or will you trust the math, build your systems, and let momentum completely take over? Your past self built the foundation. Is your future self ready to build the empire? Thanks so much for joining me on this explainer.